All right, I think we're going. Welcome back to another one of these things where we just talk about stuff, I suppose. Hope you're having a happy Tuesday. One of our team members at work likes to call them Happy Tuesdays. So I'm just like pulling my eye skin. I'm sure that looks cool. I don't know why I do that. I think I like the sound like that my eyes make when like air gets caught underneath them. It's all like that. I don't know. Weird stuff. Probably oversharing. Sorry about that. Anyway, hope your day's going great. It's been going all right over here. Been plenty busy with some work stuff going on. Big new projects to be working on. So one of those kinds of, hey, we need a lot of people to help out with this, but we also don't want just like anybody doing it. If they don't want to do something like this, that's fine, but we're looking for a few volunteers, and that actually worked. So that's been kind of cool to see that actually work out. At least from a developer standpoint, it's a fairly volunteer perspective. I'm sure from the manager perspective, we're all just going to be like, yep, we need to figure this out. We probably need to work together so we know how all our people work together. Cool. So probably a fair amount of work for people who are sort of keeping tabs on everybody and making sure things are kind of on track and things. We'll see how all that goes. But mostly meetings and planning right now. Cool deal. Anywho, what to kind of chat about today? I guess one of the things that kind of crossed my mind was actually like one of the kinds of meetings that I have as I guess like you should have this like no matter who you are. It's just a different perspective depending on like what your role is. But one of the kinds of meetings we have at where I work are called a one-on-one. It's a meeting where you can meet with where you talk with your like immediate so what I'm looking for, like I don't want to say boss, but like manager, supervisor, however you want to call it. We're all just managers basically for like this development kind of hierarchy thing. Like I still code occasionally, but I'm primarily managing a couple or a few people, like a few developers. I still have one of those with the person I report to, but the people who report to me have those with me on a bi-weekly basis. No. Yes. I forget which one's which. Bi and semi are like, I'm pretty sure I was using them for the wrong reason or the wrong way all the time. Like if I say bi-weekly, that means every other week. And if I say semi-weekly, then that means twice a week. Whoa. Mind blown when I first learned that a bit ago. Well, it was like 8 years ago now, but it was still like one of those moments like, oh, I think I've been using this wrong my whole life. But we have these relatively recurring meetings. Well, they are recurring. They're relatively frequent recurrences, just to kind of talk about how you're doing, kind of at the like with your role, with what you're doing, what the projects you're working on are, how you feel about your career trajectory and things like that. And I've always valued that kind of meeting, just being able to make sure that where you want to be is kind of where you're going. And it's just kind of good to check back in with who you're reporting to and who you report with to make sure like yes, this person like really wants to do this. Like instead of being like if I'm working with like a developer 1 and they're like, I'd like to be a developer 2, or I'd like to go up the developer chain of like just climb the developer ladder basically, and I'm just a senior dev, then making sure that they're doing everything they need or have everything they need to be able to succeed at that. But you might also run into people who are like, yeah, I want to be like a quality engineer, or I want to end up being a technical writer or something. Then you try and help them to get out of their current position into where they need to be to succeed. And I kind of like just being able to do that and do that check-in. But one of the things that we were talking about was just kind of using how you kind of use your time. One of the things that I always do, or encourage, is people to use their time for learning for themselves, self-betterment, self-improvement. And one of the ways that I have historically done that, like I do okay like watching videos back and learning by having people talk at me about stuff. But even from like school days, the best way for me to learn is by, well, one, writing it down, so committing it to memory. If it's a memorization thing, then writing it down helps a lot. But if it's just a learning and understanding thing, hands-on is by far the best way for me to learn. So like I'll go watch a tutorial or something if I want to memorize something. If I want to like memorize a concept or something along those lines, a pattern, then I'll write down whatever the person who is talking at me is talking at me, and that helps me understand. That's basically how I got away with never studying in school, was whatever the teacher was saying, I would write it down. And for some reason, I have a ridiculously good memory as soon as I write something down. I don't know if everybody else gets that, but if you're having trouble remembering things and you haven't tried writing them down as somebody saying it, try it. It worked wonders for me all through school. It still does. But the other thing is kind of what I wanted to concentrate on, just because there's a pretty interesting way that you can spin that. And that's hands-on learning. So this is going to be primarily developer focused here. So if you're a programmer, then this is going to maybe make some sense. Is probably one of the best ways that you can do hands-on learning, in my opinion. Like you can do this a couple ways. There are plenty of tutorials out there where you can just follow along, but a lot of those are just you following steps. It's effectively writing down, but with a different medium. So if that helps you memorize how to do something, then that's helpful and you can do that. But when you're out there doing like actual development work, it's rarely as straightforward as do it the de facto standard way. It's usually, I have a problem I need to solve and I don't know what to do about it. Like nothing I'm trying that standard works, and I need to think of some way to put a spin on whatever that standard is. And one of the best ways that I found that you can help yourself learn is by helping other people with their problems. So there's this site called Stack Overflow. That's spun off a bunch of different sites. The whole suite is called Stack Exchange, and it's just ranging from like video games to code to various languages to math to physics and just various different sciences and literature and even like different religions and things. Like if people have questions about something or they're having a problem understanding it, then you can go in there and find people who are asking these questions and try and answer them. Generally, with some of them are more like philosophical, like how would I use this word? Could you use this? And if someone's like, yeah, you could use this in kind of like the slang way, but it's not like a proper way to use a word, then like it's definitely, that's not going to be like probably the answer that somebody like goes out there and says like, yes, this is the de facto way to use it. This is how you would use this word. But when it comes to like philosophy too, it's just like really, for some reason, my CPU is like going really hot right now. Doesn't sound like it, but I'm getting alerts from my fan. Anyway, totally digress. I can get that to go away. Don't bother me again. Okay, thank you. We'll see if it'll probably come right back. What was I saying? Anyway, like sometimes like different answers will come up that are just sort of like, yes, it's just a different way of thinking about it. And as long as you explain how you think about it, then that works. For things like code or math, it's a little less amorphous. Like you're generally looking for some right answer. What's nice about programming, at least, is there's many different ways that you can approach something. So your approach, as long as you end with something that works, even if it's not like the most efficient way, it's a way to do it, and you can suggest that as an answer. So either me and my I just want to learn in a painful way, or I want to learn in a competitive way, or I want to learn in a real environment. Those are probably the three ways that you can probably think about this. It's I just want to throw myself into the fire. Cool, whatever. That's effectively what you're doing here. You don't know all the basics. You just want to help somebody solve a problem. 2, highly competitive, because this is a gigantic community and questions come out multiple times a second just for things to solve. And a lot of people need a lot of people need help, and there's a lot of people listening, and they want to gain what the site calls reputation, points just for how helpful you are. There aren't a lot of people with like a ton, but there are a lot of people with a good chunk. And if you really like having a high score or feeling like that high score makes you a better person or something, or you're just comparatively a better developer or problem solver because you're able to do that, then sure, it's a reason to go do something that's helping people and you get a rise out of it too. But for me, it was being able to solve an actual problem that somebody has. And it was just a really good way to be like, I've been interested in this library or this language or something. And it's just like, gosh, if only I had a way to solve a real problem with it. A world of people with real problems is waiting there for you. And I can't tell you how many times I use that site to figure out how to do something. I've never asked a question on Stack Overflow, but I always, it's just one of the, like if I'm looking for an answer to a code or a DBA, a database administration problem, or a server administration problem, one of the top results that'll come back for me is Stack Overflow. Partially because I go there fairly often, partially because they're just really good matches on those kinds of searches. You're usually Googling some error message that came out of your program, so it's nothing that like a lot of people would come across unless they were deliberately looking for something like object not set to instance of object, which who would Google that other than a developer? So that's how you end up in places like that. It sort of zones in on that. But as I was talking with one of my reports about like doing that, just because I learned in a hands-on way, that's how I went with self-improvement. I would use some work time to answer those questions. It's not doing anything for the company, arguably directly, but it's doing a ton for them as far as me learning and being a better person for the company. So as far as I'm aware, good use of time. So I encourage that kind of thing too. But one of the things that he put a spin on it, and I enjoyed this too, because there was definitely an aspect of this, because I could go to any like website to like get answers or provide answers to, but just how much I used that site when I was starting off as a developer, it felt like a way I could give back to that community by joining and answering questions. And that got me to thinking more about how we could use our time, our skills, use both of those really, use our skills and time that we have to actually help people with needs that those skills kind of fill. And it kind of got me thinking just to how even if it's not like a, how do you say it, like a site where you're like going to code for like a small business that can't afford a developer, it's really just helping anybody that needs help. It's you don't need to pay any money to have a Stack Overflow account, and it's free to just go ask a question. So you can immediately get help from a ton of experts who are looking to help people. So it really is kind of just volunteering time to help people in need. It feels kind of neat. It's a good way to give back to a community as a part of learning. And that got me to thinking more just along the lines of, I wonder if there are other, and there are definitely others. Like it was a question years ago that I had about whether there are sites to try and match like people who can't afford a developer to developers willing to give some of their time and their skills to help them solve a problem they have. Like if a cafe just opens and they're looking to put a website together and they just can't afford, they don't know how to use was just any of the tools that you need to be able to create a website. You don't even know the first place to start. And even if you did tell somebody, it's like, oh, just use Squarespace or use like Weebly or Wix, it's like they might not even know how to use that either. And you need a fair amount of skill anyways to put together a decently designed site to boot. And a lot of that stuff is just this skill set that's just in the skill set for a developer in most cases. Like, you might not be making the most beautiful thing in the world, but you're making something serviceable, probably better than something that they put together with zero knowledge of what people are looking for to do the code too. And there are plenty of places that you can kind of donate your time to help people with there as well. So it was just kind of one of those things that it reminded me, really, that like years ago when I was like kind of in the prime of learning how to develop and just be a decent programmer and just learning new tech and things, staying modern, as they say in the biz. Like that was effectively what I was doing. It was just donating my time, volunteering for a community of people who needed help. Not necessarily like for any cause. That's probably why it like kind of felt detached from that for me for a long time. It's not like somebody's definitely having a problem. It's the same kind of problem that like a coworker or a teammate would have. It's like, my code's not compiling, can you take a look at this? Versus I'm a struggling small business and I could really use help. But really they're both people on the other side that are just, they can't afford it with their skills. They can't afford it with their money. They can't afford it with their time to do this on their own. And they feel like they need to ask a question, and they might not have like the network of people to work with, but you do have this community of people who can come in and provide some feedback or help. Just pretty neat. So kind of no matter where you are, I know this has been like a lot, very developer oriented, very programmy in nature. But it's just kind of neat to remind yourself that if you are kind of learning how to do something, there are communities out there for being a bit more hands-on with that learning experience. I know not everybody will kind of agree with this, just because I think we're kind of hardwired to, or at least in like this present space, this economy, this how we are, that if we're using our time and skills, then we should be making money for that time. So I think people generally gravitate towards things like, what do I even call it anymore? Upwork, Fiverr, places like that, where people have a task and they're like, I'll pay you some money to do this thing. But there are some places that don't do that either. And if you are just learning or looking to just solve very interesting problems or be able to pick and choose your problems, then being able to go to communities where they're just sort of like, I'm looking to write this kind of a post, but I'm not sure how to engage the audience in this way, or I have no idea what SEO is. How can I make this post reach people from a writing perspective? And things like, I'm having trouble with this library, or my label isn't printing on my chart that I'm trying to render in JavaScript for some reason, or I am not getting a certain response code to come back out of my API endpoint. Those are more specific problems. They're not, I'm a business or I'm a person struggling with something and I'd really like some help here, or I'm a nonprofit trying to build this tool to help the environment in some way. It's just, I am a person trying to do a task and I'm having trouble. Can you help? And that's still in some way, and to some level, volunteering your time to help somebody in need. So it was kind of neat. It was just a little disparate for me back then, being like, this is just the place that I'd go. And it never really occurred to me that people are volunteering their time to answer questions, but that's just kind of how the developer community is. A lot of them like to help out. We're problem solvers by nature. But there are likely other sites or other communities for different types of things, where you can offer your time and skills too. Honestly, your skills are some of the most beneficial things that you can offer with your time. And like, in lieu of being able to like donate money, time and skills are some of the best things that we can do when volunteering too. So something to keep in mind. This kind of took a weird road to just being like, volunteering is cool, and if you're looking to learn a new skill set, then volunteering yourself while you're learning it is frankly a nice way to learn it too. I do it right now, even with like my natural area stewardship stuff. I'm going out there and I don't know much about plant ecology at this point. I know a lot more than I did 2 years ago, and I know how to point out a lot of plants that I didn't know how to point out before. So it's just being around people, learning, donating my time, and then listening to them when they have like plant ID tips that they want to share, or why we do certain things when uprooting certain invasives and stuff like that. There's a lot of ways that this can be applied. It's just what you make of it, I suppose. So anyway, if you are thinking about learning in a hands-on way, maybe try and find a community where people need a little bit of help. And they're okay having an amateur, essentially, try and solve a real problem for them. It can be helpful. You'll feel a little bit better afterwards, too. At least it does for me. And you learn a little bit. Win-win-win. Win-win-win. Anyway, this has been a long one. Longer than yesterday by a long shot. So we'll call it at that. Hope you're having a wonderful Tuesday. And won't be here tomorrow. Be at rehearsal in the evening. So that'll be that. And we'll catch you in the next one. See ya.